Over the last few weeks, anyone with even a peripheral interest in AI will have been overloaded with commentary about DeepSeek, and specifically their new R1 model, which, developed by a Chinese company for a fraction of the cost of OpenAI's technology, gives their recent reasoning models a run for their money. However, if you headed over to DeepSeek's website to get signed up, you might be dismayed to hear that it's now been reported that they somehow lost control of some of their data, and lots of user content, including prompts, was exposed. This very quickly became the worst case scenario of why people caution against handing over your private data to a relatively unknown website with questionable security practices. But this doesn't reduce the possible utility of DeepSeek's new models. So let's look at how you might go about using DeepSeek safely, getting the benefit of this AI alternative without the fear associated with handing over your deepest secrets to a website or app you're not sure you can trust. But first, a quick introduction. My name is Nick DeCourcy. I advise owners and leaders of small and medium-sized businesses on achieving more using AI, and I focus on Microsoft 365 Copilot, as well as a range of AI technologies. If you need help and want to learn more about me and my advisory or coaching services, check out the links down below. Before we jump into any technical demos, let's consider a couple of issues to outline what we are looking at here and why. First, specifically, what is the issue with the DeepSeek app or web service we're concerned about? And second, more generally, how can we apply this thinking to other AI services to keep ourselves safe? The company behind DeepSeek, based in China, is a relatively new entrant, having been established in 2023. But in a market where everything is new, this in itself shouldn't be surprising. For every player with a good history like Microsoft or Google, there are 10 or more startups doing AI, and not all will be putting safety or security first. DeepSeek R1 isn't their first model. Their first release was 15 months ago, and they've had a steady cadence of model releases in the period between then and now. Moving to their DeepSeek V3 and now R1 models, they moved into a space that was competitive with advanced models from the likes of OpenAI, and with the release of an iOS and Android app based on R1, they quickly rose to the top of the app download charts. From a technology perspective, what set DeepSeek apart was that they had claimed to train a model in the same realm of capability as OpenAI or Anthropic's Best, for a fraction of what those US companies believe is the right amount to invest in training a new model. There's a political story there too, as the US had sought to cut off supply of the latest AI training hardware to China, and instead, DeepSeek just found clever ways to get more from older, less capable hardware. But in terms of its website services and app, which is made available for free, what set DeepSeek apart from its US or European-based competitors were concerns about what it might do with your data. However, we do need to keep this in context, as unless you've been living under a rock since the dawn of social media, if you're not concerned about what Google or Meta or numerous other all-American companies are doing with your data, you need to diversify your news sources. The big and significant issue with DeepSeek, essentially the same issue that has had TikTok in the US government's crosshairs, is that because its service is China-based, the private data it holds could be available to the Chinese government and potentially used for purposes adverse to US national security. However, it's probably important to remember that most of us don't deal in information that could put anyone's national security at risk. At far greater risk is our personal online safety, the risk of identity theft, the risk of losing proprietary business data, or even the reputational harm that could come through inopportune online data turning up in the wrong place. And while DeepSeek did just suffer a data breach, are they any more risky in terms of that happening than some unknown US-based startup? I would argue that for certain the answer to that is no. So while DeepSeek might be in the news about this issue because of their links to China, of more relevance to you and certainly to your business should be to always be really conservative about which services you share your data with, and for most of us the issue of national security will be low on a list of rather more pressing reasons for this concern. But the fact is, the app or website of any AI service, even leaders like ChatGPT or Copilot, is just a user interface layer sitting on top of an AI model. And when it comes to AI models, you have choices about which ones you use and where you use them that can give you total control over your data. DeepSeek has been released as an open source model you can download and run locally, but with a big caveat that the full model is sized at 671 billion parameters, and that it's likely absolutely no one in the audience for this video has hardware capable of running this either at home or in their business premises. However, there are various ways you can try DeepSeek, or at least flavours of DeepSeek, without signing up for their website or app. If you're finding this video useful, it would be great if you'd hit the like button and leave a comment to help it get in front of more interested people. Also, if you'd like to see more like this, please do subscribe to the channel. We've looked at Ollama previously on the channel in a video where I showed you how to run Microsoft's Phi SLMs locally on your PC. I'll put a link to that video down below. And now, as you can see, DeepSeek has been added to Ollama's model catalogue. But there are a number of options for using DeepSeek, from 1.5 billion parameters right the way up to what I just mentioned as the 671 billion parameter model. If we consider that LLMs are trained by consuming lots of data and then building mathematical patterns that represent the connections in that knowledge, then models with more parameters maintain a higher fidelity mapping of all those relationships. Imagine the model is a map showing the routes between different concepts. A 1.5 billion parameter model is like Bing Maps zoomed out all the way to the national level, whereas a 671 billion parameter model is like zooming in all the way to be able to see the whole country, but with the resolution great enough to see all the side streets. Either would give you the general capacity to navigate, but if you wanted to find a certain address off the beaten path, you'd need the higher fidelity model. However, the trade-off is that the full version of Bing Maps needs a lot more processing capacity and storage to operate than a simple JPEG showing all the major highways across the country. In the same way, as parameter count grows for AI models, the amount of memory and inference compute capacity needed grows as well. The way DeepSeek has built out different sizes of models is not really by having different size versions of their model. The proper DeepSeek R1 is the 671 billion parameter model. They have then taken different sized open source models, specifically Qwen and Llama, and through fine tuning of those models to reason more like DeepSeek, have created what are known as distilled models, that essentially are just entirely different models cosplaying as smaller versions of DeepSeek proper. I definitely don't have the hardware for the full DeepSeek R1 model. If you do, and you've already run it locally, drop a comment down below. But on this system, I could certainly try some of the smaller models. Let's fire up Ollama, grab the 1.5 billion parameter distilled model, and see what it can do. After installing Ollama on your system, see my prior video if you need help with that, you download the model by running the command Ollama pull DeepSeek R1, and then append the 1.5b version to the end. It downloads the 1.1 gigabyte model onto your system, and then to run the model we'll use the command Ollama run DeepSeek R1 1.5b, and you'll be in a chat mode with this model. We can try something simple like write a short poem about the development of generative AI. It responds quickly, and after quite a lot of thinking through the issue. One of the interesting capabilities of DeepSeek is your ability to see these reasoning or thinking steps laid out. It produces a poem. Remember, this is the smallest version of these distilled models, so this is the most lightweight, meaning it's going to run the best on limited hardware, but it's also going to be the least capable. And that's all very well. Great, I could run the smallest version of this model on my local PC, but what I'm looking for is a safer way to get access to the DeepSeek I would be using on their website or app, and I want to do so without spending $100,000 on an AI server. So let's look at a different approach. Imagine you or one of your colleagues or team members had uploaded a bunch of your business's data to the DeepSeek web service. You'd probably be pretty worried now you're watching this video. But as already mentioned, it's far from the only risk when thinking about using AI. This is exactly why I put together my new on-demand course, Responsible AI for Business Users, to ensure those who are using AI in business, or leading teams of people who are, have the right knowledge to use these tools responsibly, safely, and in a way that minimises business risk. Get started today using the link below. This easily accessible video-based course will give you an overview of everything you need to know to ensure you don't become the latest cautionary tale for what not to do with AI. The full DeepSeek R1 model is available as part of the Azure AI Foundry, and getting started with it is even simpler than running the smaller models locally with Ollama. I'll assume you already have an AI hub and project set up in AI Foundry, and you can just jump to the model catalogue. If we dive into that model option, you can immediately see that what's being offered here is the 671 billion parameter full DeepSeek R1, rather than those distilled versions we just looked at that are based on other models. Getting access to the model couldn't be simpler. You could just deploy it in the cloud in seconds, and once you have a deployment ready, you can jump over to the chat playground experience to try it out. Here I'll try the same process as I previously did. Again, I get a bunch of thinking. But interestingly, you can see that even deploying Azure's vast resources, this bigger model seems to be slower in the cloud than the much smaller model was on my local PC. It's not really a fair comparison though. However, it delivers a poem just as the more basic version did, and at first glance this does seem somewhat more creative. Now, should it need reinforcing, I guess it's good to talk about why, in terms of your data, it's far safer to run these models either locally or via Azure than to just start sharing private information with other AI websites that spring up. On your system, once you've downloaded the model to Ollama, you could literally disconnect from the internet and it would still work. None of your data is going anywhere. And in Azure, the content you're sharing is treated with exactly the same protections as if you're using other Azure services. With that said, one of the other aspects of running these models in Azure is how easily they can be hooked into other parts of Microsoft 365. Take Power Automate for example. Here I have a simple instant Cloudflow that takes a single input, a prompt for DeepSeek, and using the HTTP connector places a post request to the Azure AI instance of DeepSeek that I've just deployed, taking an API key and a little JSON for the prompt request, and I can run this prompt against DeepSeek in the cloud. And with that we can generate another poem yet again on the same topic and see that what comes out the other end is roughly similar to what we'd seen before. Clearly, a flow like this isn't all that helpful, but using a similar approach you can very easily plug in the full range of AI options you see in Azure AI Foundry into pretty much anything you're doing with Power Automate Power Apps, or even part of agents you're building in Copilot Studio. And if DeepSeek is your chosen tool, you could have it safely integrated into whatever you're doing without having to go and register for a questionable website or send your data to China, which obviously was the point of this video. Remember, whenever using AI, whether locally on your PC, in the cloud, or as part of your automations or apps, it's essential that these generative outputs are checked for accuracy. Additionally, please know that all the demos you saw in this video are for demonstrative purposes only, and you never saw anyone's private information. The most important takeaway should be this: whether it's DeepSeek or Phi or GPT-4o, the number of options that exist for easily running models which are either independent of any web service or app, or at least bifurcated from web services like ChatGPT, grows every day. There are now more than 1,800 models in Azure AI Foundry alone. Is this something you should be bothering to play with if you're just finding your feet with Microsoft 365 Copilot? Probably not. But in our new agentic world, where many will be building assistants for tasks they or their business complete, having an understanding of the relatively light complexity and cost of getting rolling with these tools is important. Let me know your thoughts on this. Have you tried out the web or app version of DeepSeek? Did the data loss or other scrutiny make you regret your decision? And do you plan to use DeepSeek either on your own hardware or elsewhere in the cloud? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching through to the end. Until the next video, bye bye.